Hi everyone, this is Miss S from Excelsior Charter School, and today we're going to be covering Geometry, Lesson 3-6, Lines in the Coordinate Plane. So we have three different forms of equations that we need to go over for this lesson, and you started learning these in Algebra 1. So we're going to begin with slope-intercept form. Alright, slope-intercept form is always in the form y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. In geometry, you've learned that you have to have at least 2 points to graph a line. The y-intercept gives you 1 point, and you can use the slope to graph the other. So here's an example from your homework. This is from practice part 1. This is question number 2. They ask you to graph y equals negative 5/3x plus 2. So on a graph here, we would begin at our b term, our y-intercept. So from our origin in the middle, we'd go up 2, and that's our first point. And from that point, we would move our m term, or our slope, and it's negative 5/3. So I'd go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots, and I would go to the right, always to the right, 1, 2 spots, and there would be our second point, and you can connect the dots with a smooth straight line, just like that. All right, our second form is standard form. Standard form always comes in the form ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a and b are not both 0. And normally, when we have standard form, we would graph or solve this using intercepts. So we're going to do one from your homework. This is practice part 1, question number 3. It asks you to find the intercepts of 6x minus y equals 3. So to do so, we're going to solve each of these equations if one of the variables is 0. So 6 times 0 minus y equals 3, or you would do 6x minus 0 equals 3, and these will give you your two intercepts. So you solve with algebra, as I have done here, and what you get is that y equals negative 3 and x equals positive 1/2. So the intercept for the y value would be 0, negative 3, because remember x was 0 and y is negative 3. And for the x-intercept, you'd have 1/2, 0. All right, so now we move on to our third form, which is point-slope form. And point-slope form is the longest equation, but it's actually one of the easiest forms. So here we have the equation here. It's always y minus y sub 1 equals m, remember m's always the slope, times the quantity x minus x sub 1. So to show you how to do this, we're going to use one of your homework problems again. This is practice part 1. This is question number 7, and it asks you to write the equation in point-slope form of a line that goes through the point 4, negative 1 with a slope of 3. So I always like to write it kind of like this and leave some space here. Remember, the slope is always our m, so it's always going to go here in the middle, just like it is 3. And then the 4 and the negative 1, remember the 4 is an x value and the y is a negative 1 value. It's always x and then y. So notice how in our equation y is in the front, but in our point y is in the back. And in our equation x is in the back, but in our point y is in the front. So we actually need to have these numbers switch sides from the front of our point to the back of our equation. And when it switches sides here, it also switches signs. And then for our negative 1y, which was in the back of our point, it's going to move here to the front of our equation. And when it switches sides, it's again going to switch signs. So our answer is y plus 1 equals 3 times the quantity x minus 4. So the slope drops in here, the m drops into the middle, and then the point switches sides and signs. All right, sometimes you'll have to change forms. This actually comes from practice part 2 from question number 1. They want you to write the equation in slope-intercept form that goes to the point 5, 2 with a slope of negative 2. So we just learned that we can put this into point-slope form because they've given us a point and the slope. Remember, the slope goes here in the middle, and our point switches sides and sines, just like this. But this is correct in point-slope form, but it's not in slope-intercept form. So we have to do some algebra in order to switch that. So what I'm going to do is distribute that -2 to everything, and then I'm going to add 2 to both sides to get y by itself. And you'll get y equals -2x plus 12, and that is in slope-intercept form. Our slope is still -2, and now our y-intercept is positive 12. All right, sometimes you'll come across horizontal and vertical lines, and these ones will only have one variable. It'll either have an x or a y. It won't have both. Whichever letter it has, that's the axis that the graph would cross. So, for example, if we had x equals 2, and we were going to graph this, this line will only touch the x-axis because it's the only variable there. So we would go to x equals positive 2, we'd put a dot right there. Now I need a line that goes through that dot that never touches the y-axis. So that would be a vertical line, just like this. And if I had y equals -3 on the y-axis, I would move to -3, and I would need a line that goes through this point that never touches the x-axis, since there isn't any x value in our equation. So I would need a horizontal line that goes through at -3. So now let's take a look one more time at your homework. Practice part 2, question number 8. And they want you to choose the correct equations for the vertical and horizontal lines that go through f at -1, positive 8. So remember, this is the x value here, and this is the y value here. If I was going to graph that, it would be -1, positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It would go through this point right there. So for our x value, for our x equation, it would need to go through this point here, right here at -1, and never touch the y-axis at all. So it would be x equals -1. And for our y value, it would be at positive 8. So we would need a horizontal line going through here at positive 8. So y would equal 8. And you could notice that the 8 from the y value comes right down here, and the -1 from the x value comes right down there. And that's the answer to that question. Good luck, everybody. I hope you guys do great.